Welcome back to SIFFtv. I'm Beth Barrett, SIFF's artistic director, and I'm really thrilled to be joined by three filmmakers who have films in the festival this year. Peggy Case, who is the executive producer of Baby Doe, Justin Robert Vinall, who is the writer, director, producer of Stargazer in the Spirit Cabinet Shorts package, and Jason Reid, who is the producer of Suburban Fury, Robinson DeVore's documentary. Thank you all so much for coming today. We're going to have a great conversation about film, filming in Washington, documentaries, shorts, all of it. We're just gonna get into it. So what makes Seattle a good place for filmmakers?
I guess I could start. I mean, I was born and raised in Seattle. So, for me, it's hometown. It's like the people that I've come up with in the film industry, collaborators, partners. But I think there's a great sort of independent spirit here that is great for filmmaking. It's a little bit like segmented. It's not a huge industry, but the people that are here are doing like really interesting projects, oftentimes outside the box. And I just think it's a good place to create. It's also, as an editor, also like the rainy seasons. It's actually nice to have like long-term editing projects to sort of keep you busy when things are rainy. So, but I mean, there's lots of reasons. Lots of good people is the main one.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just like being born and raised near Seattle as well. Just like the community is very like intertwined, and I feel people that I've come up with too and grown through the industry in like last 10 years. I feel like there's a great sense of kind of like building with one another, and even like with Seattle too, it's like you get so much versatility. It's like, I did a TV show a couple years ago and we had like 3 company moves in a day, and it's like you can go all the way down to like Georgetown and get like a completely different vibe to like what Greenwood would offer. So like it's just like there's so much kind of diversity and like variety in terms of like not only the people that are working here, but the locations that are like the settings more so that is like kind of provided within like the area.
What makes it unique to be here? Is there anything like specifically like Seattle, the rain, obviously, that brings out that creative spirit?
Well, I think that I totally agree with what you guys both just said, but filmmakers in Seattle have so much support. I mean, from the City of Seattle Film Office, which is now aptly called, what is it now called? The Seattle of Office. The Seattle Office of Economic Development. But to Washington Filmworks, Seattle has great post-production facilities, Light Press and Bad Animals and Dubs Inc. They're all just such amazing people that will go out of their way for you. But also what filmmakers have is each other, like you guys have been saying. And I think that's really, really true that you have these colleagues and you can call them and they'll call you back. And they'll help you and try to support you and jump in. Last fall, I was talking with Jason Reid a whole bunch. I never saw you, but we were on the phone. You were in New York. I was out of nowhere, and we were just talking a whole bunch. And I couldn't believe it because I knew how busy you were. And whenever I would leave you a message, you would call me back.
Yeah, I mean, like I cared about the project that Peggy was producing, Sweetheart Deal. I mean, it was like I have such respect for these films that like take so long to make. I mean, I've been involved in a whole slew of them in a row where I've come in later in the process, but to see through a documentary, especially when it's longitudinal over like a long period of time, as Sweetheart Deal was, or some of my films such as Sam Now and Dirtbag that were shot over a decade, I just wanted to help, I believed in what they were trying to do, and I believed that it was award worthy, and I had just gone through the process with Sam Now, taking the film out on the award circuit. And so I had a lot of information that I learned, and it was a huge learning process in that. And so coming into that cold, like the way I learned was talking to other filmmakers. Now, there aren't that many people like in the academy in Washington State, but like the documentary community as a whole is very giving and very forthright with information if you are genuinely asking, and I think locally people are like that too. So I was just trying to help the best way I could.
Well, I mean, and that brings up sort of that documentary and shorts concept of you make these films sometimes, a Sweetheart Deal, it takes 7 years. Short films hopefully take a little shorter period of time than 7 years. Not always. But then it's created. Hopefully there's a festival out there, you do the festival run, but what happens after that? Like how do you continue to support films post the obvious exhibition?
I in regards to short films, I've looked at them as kind of like, what do you do with them afterwards? Just because, they kind of go into like a bit of a vacuum with like YouTube or Vimeo. So for me, it's like, making sure you have like a developed website where it's showcasing all your work and making it more act as a business card at this point. Because I've had a short that played at SIFF a couple years ago that attracted some interest from folks. I was able to get funding from that for my next for STARGAZER, and was able to kind of go from there and have it act as a business card. So it's like, for me, it's like trying to hone in skills that I'm still like figuring out and developing and solidifying in some respects too, just because the type of films that I make are very genre driven, and I'm always just trying to be mindful of like, if I want the film to do well and play well, and that's gonna react based on like how I see the last film has done and how I implement like improvements from that. And so it's just a matter of like, if you're able to like get on a platform like Alter or Dust to help further exposure, that's great. But also I think building kind of a social media presence too helps kind of build an audience as well over time.
I mean, I think like the difficult part about feature films, feature documentaries in particular, is figuring out what you do afterwards. I mean, festivals, it's relatively straightforward. You submit your film out, you go around and you take it, but then what? If do you have a sale? Is there a streaming platform that wants to pick it up? Is there somebody who wants to do a theatrical release of your film? And really, like, this is the hard part of the process for me. I mean, I'm also good at it because I've done it over and over again, but every film is different.
Mhm.
Every path to getting to your audiences probably is different. And it takes a lot of work. And after like working on the film for a long time, to enter into that next phase, it requires a little bit of a different gear.
Mhm.
And it's not something every filmmaker has or even like wants to do. I mean, it's a lot of work, and sometimes there's compromises that have to be made, but the main thing is figuring out how to get your film out there. And every film has been different for me. Like Dirtbag, we had Patagonia as our title sponsor. They took it out to stores. We had this huge demand after Fred Becky passed away from climbing communities all over the world. And we, me and Adam Brown and the director Dave Oleski spent a year of our lives like booking screenings. And and on any given night there could be 1 to 4 screenings anywhere in the world, and it was like crazy. But man, it's a lot of work. It's kind of thankless work in some ways. It's rewarding once you actually get it out there, like with Sam Now, like once it aired on PBS and once we're streaming on the Criterion channel. And that's amazing to be able to tell people, hey, just go to the PBS app or the Criterion channel. But man, the legal and all of those things that go into like getting your film out there, it's a hard path.
Yeah. And self-distribution. Peggy, you had with Sweetheart Deal, you had a distributor, but yet you did a lot of the work yourself also.
Yeah, we sort of partnered with Abramarama, I guess I would say. Yeah. And that went really well. We did a week in New York and a week in Seattle, which was wonderful, and a week in LA, and then 10 special event screenings around the country or more, I think. And then we came back to Seattle. It was just such a great experience we were at the SIFF Film Center for a week. And we just had 2 Q&A screenings, official Q&As, but we were so excited to talk to the people you never knew who was going to come to the screening. So it's almost, I went to every single screening and we had 2 a day for a week, but we just kind of hung out down there. And the people the staff at the theater were so nice because they let us just like run down at the beginning and say, well, we don't have an official Q&A today, but we're going to be over in the corner afterwards. If you just have any questions, you want to come ask us. And everyone would come out to the lobby. And it was just amazing to see. I mean, some people were like crying, and some people would come up and ask all these questions. And I think the main thing is you learn so much about your film in that process that you wouldn't learn if you weren't there talking with these people. It was just really rewarding. And then mostly, I think the most wonderful thing also is that you get to see that the film actually works. you don't doubt it anymore. You have this experience and a week long of audiences, and oh, this film actually does work. I mean, it works, but you know.
Yeah. Is it different from doing festival screenings?
That's a really good question. Well, there was something about the week-long screenings that I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. What do you think, Jason?
I guess maybe a little bit. I mean, festival audiences are probably a little bit different than your theater going audiences. Usually by the time you're doing a theatrical run, there's more information about the film out there. I feel like I think at festivals, there's a lot of times people are going in like totally cold. They're if it's a world premiere at SIFF, there aren't a whole bunch of reviews to read or any reviews. Maybe the film has a website, maybe they don't. So I think that's kind of the exciting part about festivals is the discovery process. I was just down at the Ashland Independent Film Festival a couple of weeks ago and totally went into movies cold, not even reading the description. Our executive producer on Suburban Fury and Sam Now, Dee Dee Wigley, was there, and she's well researched on everything. And so she, was like, oh, we got to go see this one. But I was like, I didn't have time to, I've been too busy. I didn't have time to read the program. I'm kind of one of those people that likes to go in cold without reading a review or reading or watching a trailer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that once you're at a theatrical release, you pretty much have to have a trailer.
Yeah.
There's got to be the key art. There's got to be some press because you've screened at festivals and stuff. And so there's just more visibility with the film.
Yeah. Some of those films that I go into because it fits on my timetable are my favorite films. I'm like, well, I don't have any idea what this is about. I don't know if it's narrative or a documentary, experimental. I'm just like, but it fits in my schedule, which can be that, that amazing sense of discovery that festivals, you can only get within a festival.
Yeah. Well, speaking of SIFF, this year it has a wonderful film called Seeds. And I'd heard about Seeds from it premiering at Sundance. And also we share the same lawyer. And so he's like, oh, if you got a chance to see Seeds, you should, but I really didn't know anything about it. I knew the premise that it was about black farmers, but I didn't know anything about the style. And when I saw it, oh man, what a gorgeously shot film. And it was very different. I was picturing maybe a more nuts and bolts documentary. It's a ITVS documentary. Not that those can't be artful. Sam Now was like a PBS documentary, but sometimes they're more straightforward. And this was not straightforward, and it was really beautiful. Highly recommend.
Yeah, plays the first weekend just for anyone. Yeah, it's a gorgeous film. Where do you hope Seattle is within the film industry in 10 years?
Well, I would hope that it still retains, it still has that independent spirit that both of you talked about, is still making special independent films, but at the same time is also growing, commercially and with more commercial and corporate experiences, opportunities for filmmakers. But I just think that to echo what you guys were saying, that being here is kind of like being in the Wild West or something. And so that's the thing I like. We don't have this huge structure and this, that New York or LA have or something, but we have more freedom, to be creative, not only in the stories that we tell, but in the way we put together crews and the way we decide to even arrange our budgets. Everything isn't so boilerplate. And I think that's a real plus. So I would hope Seattle doesn't lose that wonderful independent spirit that it has, but that it also grows commercially and, in other ways.
I think infrastructure, it's a like what you're saying is kind of retaining the independent process. But I do think that infrastructure here, I hope improves over time. We have a lot of red tape to kind of get through, and projects that we're still trying to draw here and make here on our own. But hopefully we're able to continue to build our studio here and build more of reliable sources to pull and have the ability to create more dynamically, as opposed to kind of feeling like we're slowing behind because of Vancouver, being between Vancouver and Portland, and just kind of still having that independent draw, but still finding a way to continue to grow over time, just because it is between like kind of like what going through post-COVID, post-strikes, it's like there's a lot that the industry is facing globally. So it's also just affecting like our state in particular. Just trying to like develop more and more over time, and hopefully the way that we can continue to build is faster over this period of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think the scale could grow, but like Peggy said, we don't want to lose our independent spirit. You know, I feel like all the films that I've made have been pretty independently produced without that much like oversight. I mean, even with like ITVS, which is who helped fund Sam Now, ultimately Independent Lens on PBS. You know, they gave us feedback and stuff, but it was still our film to make and still independent. And I think the more sort of money or the more bigger business that comes in, the less the independent Seattle filmmakers will be able to like retain their voice potentially. But then at the same time, if we want to grow the industry, we have to bring these like some of these larger forces in there, and funding's a big deal. You know, funding's really hard, and especially for independent documentaries. So if there was a way to bring in more funding to this region, I think that would help as well.
And I don't disagree with that at all. It's just a matter of like having more resources for independent filmmakers, I think. And I think we're getting there. It's just like, it's kind of like, a slow process for that, which is like, fine. And like these things like take time and whatnot. But no, I 100% agree. Like, more opportunities for grants and like, resources is I think critical.
Yeah.
So a little selfishly, as we're looking at the festival starting, in less than a week, crazy, but true. What was your first SIFF experience?
Gosh, when was it? I remember going to like a midnight screening of Troll Hunter.
Oh yeah.
That was like, 2010 or something like that. And I think it might have been up at like the Egyptian or Neptune. I cannot remember. But I remember just the crowd going crazy for that when me and my friend went to go see it. And it's one of like my most cherished memories from SIFF. And I remember just getting the Blu-ray afterwards and just being so happy to be like, okay, cool. I'm glad I sought out this film and didn't like find it on streaming later and got to experience it with an audience. I really enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, I can't totally remember if it was SIFF, but maybe you'd remember. I remember going to like a special screening of Battle Royale at the Cinerama. Was that a SIFF screen? You know? And I remember just being lined all the way around the block and, once again, going in a little bit more like cold and seeing that film on the big screen with like a full audience gasping and
you didn't know what Battle Royale?
I mean, I knew a little bit about it, but this film, I didn't know that. I didn't know,
That's quite a film to jump in cold, which is awesome.
No, it was shocking, But I don't know, different films over the years, like local filmmakers just going out there and, I mean, I probably went to SIFF for the first time, maybe in high school or for sure in college, and just being able to like get a 6-pack or even get a pass, the years that I've had a pass as a filmmaker, and, I always enjoy the parties, so that, I've had a lot of great opening night and closing night. And when there used to be like a centerpiece at the Sons and Daughters of the Revolution or whatever on Capitol Hill, you're in this old house, but like it's fun to like just be with the people that you created your project with and be kind of celebrated.
Yeah. Mine was seeing To Die For, the Gus Van Sant film. Really early on, it must have been like 94, because I moved here in 93. And sitting alone in the Egyptian. And then afterwards, like Gus Van Sant came out and I was like, wait, what? You can meet directors? Wait, what? They come to these things? It was a changing event because I watched a lot of films in college, but they never had directors or cast or anything like that there. So it was very exciting.
Were you a volunteer at that point, or did you just go because you just love movies?
No, I just love movies, and I was a 6-pack buyer, and then I was a 20-pack buyer, and that was 20-pack for a long time. And then I got a pass, and then I could never go back. Because then you're like, oh, wait, I could just go to whatever I want to? Great. Yeah, I'm going to do that one.
Well, it's funny you mentioned, did you show Drugstore Cowboy? You must have.
I believe we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would not surprise me if we did.
Yeah. I just remember I have a distinct memory of seeing that film. I don't know, it just came when you were just talking about Gus Van Sant. But there's a scene, do you remember in that film where they say if you ever see like a hat on a bed, do you remember this scene?
No.
Anyway,
What
it's
happens?
some moment that like comes up in the film, and then that moment happens in the film, and I let out this like huge gasp in the movie theater or something. I just always remember that. Like, uh-oh.
I mean, but like being in the cinema and having those experiences, it's unlike being at home. You know, I think that, well, I love streaming and I watch a lot of, TV on streaming and stuff like that. I find it really hard to stream movies because I don't want that experience. I want the experience of being in the cinema. So it makes it a little challenging. Like TV has always been TV, and that's fine.
Well, it's a completely different experience. I almost feel like it's like an ancient experience now going into the cinema, and that we still have nowadays, that we're lucky enough, like no one has noticed. Like, I can't believe that it could just totally go away. I mean, of course,
Absolutely
I
could.
know. I mean, but we're so lucky to have a place like SIFF here in Seattle that has these gorgeous theaters and that is still celebrating and honoring cinema. But that experience of going into the theater and then you turn your phone off, that's unusual enough, right? Everyone turns their phones off for 2 hours. My God. And then you have this experience and you're all transported through this film in the dark. And then you come out and kind of wake up and you've all had this shared experience together in time. And
Yeah.
No, I agree completely. Like I've growing up kind of through kind of like where there used to be midnight screenings and theaters were, I remember seeing Inception and just how jam-packed that was and the reaction to the ending of the movie, and just kind of seeing it over time, just like how certain movies will like draw in like huge crowds like Barbenheimer or Sinners as of late. Like I think it's nice when you do go to the cinema and like get to like be with a crowd of people and get varying reactions and be just locked into the film, whether you like it or not. It's still an experience that everyone is sharing in that moment, and it's the discussions afterwards that are the most fun for me. And I love the experience so much, and I feel like it's great to just be in a space where everyone's just kind of like in the same kind of just realm together.
Yeah, you have to you commit.
Yeah.
When you buy a ticket
Yeah.
and you go to a movie and you sit down, not to say you can't get up and leave. I usually don't get up and leave, but when you're streaming something, it's so easy to be like, not feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch a show now or whatever. And in a movie theater, you have to decide where you're gonna go. You have to get there. You have to go in there and see it. But going to festivals, I think, is a really great when you're taking your film out, when there's time to go see other films. I mean, it's really nice. Like, you don't get the opportunity, especially for like documentaries, to see them in the theater that much, or shorts. And so, that's a really special thing to be able to see them in the theater and experience them with an audience. So rather than streaming it like shorts, you often stream online on YouTube or on the New Yorker website or whatever, and to see those, to have the opportunity to see those, that's even more rare.
Yeah.
Than a feature.
And just to hop on that too, it's like, it's shorts and documentaries. Like when you do, and as you were mentioning too, like getting like having people talk to you afterwards, when the movie was done screening, it's just like the reactions that you're getting, the discussions that you're having, just like being in the presence of hearing like certain reactions work, versus just kind of like, okay, cool. Watching it on YouTube or a streaming service or what have you. It's
like you get to hear me gasp.
Yeah. So I always find that like super rewarding, and it's a unique thing and something that I cherish as a filmmaker, as we all cherish.
You were talking about midnight screenings.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite midnight screens I used to go to in like college was The City of Lost Children. The Jean-Pierre Jeunet film and filmmaker, and Central Cinema was doing like a screening of that, like, I don't know, maybe earlier this year or the end of last year. And my wife had never seen it. And we went. And it was like so cool. It was like transported. It wasn't at midnight, but it was transported back to like that experience of seeing, films in that environment. And cult films that you love that, like, I don't see a lot of movies twice in the theater. And that's one that I have.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. cinematic experience. And I think what you guys are doing at Cinerama SIFF downtown, I still want to call it Cinerama. Yeah. But I mean, you guys have been doing more like retrospective things, you know, and I think that's really special to be able to see like some of your favorite movies on the big screen as opposed to just like watching it at home. Or you maybe like even own it, but you don't watch it, you know, and then you get to go see it on
you have it on your shelf, but then you go downtown.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember like I was coming back from Slam Dance and I'd watched The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari on like the flight back because I was like in a silent film kick recently and just like enjoying it. And I'd seen it before, but you guys recently played it again at Big. I call it Big SIFF, but SIFF Cinema Downtown, and just like with a live orchestra, live performance there, with seeing on the huge screen is like it's a totally different film, and why I love like going to the movies because like I've seen Gus Van Sant's like Elephant at home and liking it, but when I saw it in the theater, it felt like watching a completely different film and just kind of like the dread kind of looming over. So there's some kind of special magic that like theater going experiences have, whether you're seeing it in like a theater alone or a theater with a bunch of people,
And I've made two actually really good like lifelong friends just from meeting them at SIFF, people I didn't know at all. After one screening, I remember people were I don't even remember which film this was actually. I just remember the experience of meeting this person who I'm still really good friends with. And people were gradually leaving. The director was there, and then we were the last two people left. We kept asking questions, and then finally, the director left, and we looked at each other and we're like, "Well, hi, should we go out to have dinner?" And that was it. We've been like good friends since. And another person that I met that way too. It's just so funny. I mean,
that's awesome. So we're going to transition a little bit so we can hear a little bit about your films that you have in the festival this year. So, Jason, tell us about Suburban Fury.
Well, Suburban Fury is a film directed by Robinson DeVore, who has, a pretty rich Seattle filmmaking history with Police Beat, Zoo, which I know Peggy was a producer of, and Powwow. But yeah, it's a very unconventional documentary feature. It's 2 hours long. It's incredibly dense, but it's about Sarah Jane Moore, who in 1975, 50 years ago, actually, tried to assassinate President Gerald Ford in San Francisco. So it's a West Coast-based film. It wasn't shot in Seattle, but the majority of the post-production work was done here. But it really, she's the only person interviewed for the film. There's heavy archival footage and a wide, vast array of archival from all different sources and stuff that's never been seen before. And it's also a story that not many people know about. She was a conservative suburban housewife who turned to become an FBI informant and ultimately turned to more radical left politics within a span of a few years, and to the point where she tried to assassinate Gerald Ford. There's no easy answers in the film. She is not an easy subject, and she is combative sometimes. But like, I think that's the beauty of the film is there aren't easy answers to things like this. How people become radicalized. You look at what's going on in our country now with Obama voters turned Trump voters, and things can shift really quickly in terms of people's like personal politics and. That's really, what this film is about. It's about change of Sarah Jane Moore, and she's just incredibly compelling to watch on screen, and we can't wait to show it at the Cinerama SIFF downtown. The big SIFF. I told Beth when they accepted the film, I was like, can we please just have the premiere at Cinerama? It really is kind of a dream come true in a lot of ways. And Beth wrote me back. She said, I'm here to make all your dreams come true.
Oh, that's sweet. That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be really special. A lot of people in the city here worked on the film.
Yeah.
So, I think it's going to be a really special screening. And there's been, we premiered 6 months ago, so we haven't screened in Seattle yet. Everyone's like following us on social media and stuff. And, it's like, when are you bringing it to Seattle? I was like, well, fingers crossed. And then I held them off because we were doing some edit changes to the last possible minute. And yeah, I was happy to share it with you. And I was very happy to hear that they had accepted.
Yeah. No, we're really excited to show it. Can you tell us a little bit, because it's not linear. It hops all over the place. And I know you're not the editor, but how do you pull all of the story of her, she is not a reliable narrator of her own life in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's part of the fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, wait, what is happening? What are you saying here? With all the archives, like, what was that like to sort of pull that production together?
Yeah,
like that?
well, Robinson, the director, is the editor also, but like I was there for probably every edit for a lot of the time. Not every edit, but like a lot of the time. And yeah, she's challenging. She doesn't tell stories in straightforward ways. She leaves pieces out. You don't know exactly like what the truth is. And I think the archival was like so important to get included, because if it was just like one interview with somebody the whole time, you know, that would get a little bit old. And having the archival, it really like brings you into like what was happening in the country at that time, and also more specifically in the San Francisco area, the Bay. I mean, and when you have that extra fabric, you can start to understand a little bit more how this person did become radicalized. Yeah. There's also, don't need to get too into detail, but there was a creative way that we went about handling only having one interview subject. And a big part of her story is there was her FBI control agent, a man whose code name was Bertram Worthington. And so she speaks about him frequently. And so there's a voiceover dialogue of that FBI control agent that's throughout the film that is based on Sarah Jane Moore's conversations with that FBI control agent over those years. So she'd literally like tell these stories about, I'd meet him in the car and we do this. And so, that was another way we got around just like having the one interview subject, is to have a lot of archival, have this kind of character that's created out of her words and out of archival documents, and of course her interview. So there's like a rhythm to the film. Yeah. And I think that like, although it's non-linear and non-conventional in its storytelling, I think that like, there's, you're reading a book, right? And you start a new chapter. And sometimes that chapter has nothing to do with what it was before. Yeah. And sometimes you're jumping from present to past, and that's totally accepted in literature. But why can't that be accepted in film? And I think like, not that I'm a conventional filmmaker, but I'm much more conventional than Robinson is in his filmmaking. And I think that was one of the positives to getting involved in it. I'd worked with him very briefly on a project that never ended up developing, 5 or 7 years ago, which is when I first heard about this. And Darren Lund, my longtime editing partner, who's a little involved in this project, but not much. He and I were like, whoa, like some of these ideas are radical, they're very different. Like I would never think to combine that imagery with that word. And that's challenging because, I'm trying to make a film personally as a filmmaker that's accessible, that a wide audience can see. Yeah. But, Rob's much more interested in the creativity and the art and he wants it to be successful, but he doesn't want to compromise his vision. So, as a producer-director relationship, I'm constantly trying to get more clarity, more information without losing the art and the poetry of what he's trying to do. Yeah. And he's constantly trying to push the envelope to like make something new, make something different, make something that truly is different, and I like really appreciate that. It's also like difficult because you're trying to make something that's like a successful film that can get out into the marketplace, that can get sold and get great reviews. And, I think that, it's an interesting like challenge, but it's one that like I really appreciate. I feel like with Sam now, my previous like long-term documentary project, Reid
amazing
Harkness.
Film.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. But Reid Harkness, the director, also had very like specific vision, and so I think part of the fun of filmmaking is collaborating. And even if those collaborations turn into sort of like clashes, those clashes can create like what makes the great art. And so you can't be like scared to to have those things.
Well, it's that tension. It's that tension and that we were talking about earlier about just Seattle. It's that tension of not wanting to lose the creativity, not wanting to lose that sort of independent spirit, but yet needing to get it out into needing to make films and have jobs. And I think Robinson, he's a perfect example of that tension living.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like we landed in a pretty cool place with what this film is, where it's still totally non-conventional, but there's on-screen text identifiers, so what the archival is, and just certain things that like, I think that like a younger audience who didn't live through that time, me included, who was like born in the late 70s, I knew Vietnam, of course, and blotting.
Yeah.
Like Patty Hearst and the Attica prison riots, but did I know about Allende and did I know about any of the Popeye Jackson and all these radical figures in the San Francisco scene? And I knew about Patty Hearst, but I didn't know about like the Simonese Liberation Army in that level of detail, and Sinkyu and all these like people who lived through that time, like those are things that you don't necessarily have to explain. But even the fact like it's blowing younger audiences' minds that there was a time in recent American history where there was a president and a vice president that were not elected.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were not elected. Ford was appointed when Spiro Agnew resigned as vice president. And then when Nixon resigned, he ascended to the presidency and they brought in Rockefeller,
Right.
And that's just mind blowing. You talk about like, I mean, at least now, like our president was elected, but like that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like it's the president's supposed to be elected by the people. And I think that's been shocking to people who didn't know that happened in such recent history.
Yeah, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah.
Did with the main subjects, did they with how challenging they were, were you able to get more than like one interview off with them?
Oh, there's they shot well before I was involved in the project. They shot 8 days in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
And I think they went back and did 3 more days, and then they did audio interviews with her as well. So there's a massive wealth of interviews with her. And it, once again, becomes challenging. Like, what parts of her story do you want to tell? What are you able to tell? What are you able to tell visually? Because you can't have her on camera all the time. Another thing about the film is it's incredibly cinematic.
Yeah.
And the way it was shot by Sean Kirby, a one-time local DP who now lives in Vermont and does a lot of work all over the world, but based in the East Coast. He and Rob, like, they came up with a pretty incredible, like, visual way of doing her interviews. I don't want to spoil it too much, but shot in locations and places that you wouldn't necessarily expect, and I think that makes it exciting. It's also like confusing for some audiences who are expecting a standard like talking head thing. There's no like real talking head kind of interviews in this.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, well, why are you doing it this way? Well, we're doing it this way because it's
change it up. Yeah.
And that's like exciting as a filmmaker to be able to do.
Yeah.
So,
That's great.
yeah.
And Justin, you work primarily in short films and primarily in genre. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your film?
Yeah, so Stargazer is I've been referring to it as a cosmic ghost story. It's a proof of concept for a feature that I'm trying to get off the ground. It follows the story of Jonas, who is this retired astronomy professor, and over the course of like the last 40 years or so, he's been studying and obsessed with this one kind of particular star that he named Cosette. But as he's kind of going through kind of the twilight years of his life, he's reflecting on like the past and like relationships that were lost and things that he's regretful of. And one day he comes across this young woman who is also named Cosette, and there's something eerily familiar and strange about her, and it goes from there. It stars Joe Peer, Haley Stubblefield, and Olivia Finkelstein, who are all fantastic actors I was very lucky to work with. The thing with the project, though, was initially I was working on developing a completely different thing. It was a a vampire thing I was working on for like last year and a half, and then there was some a circumstance where it kind of fell apart at the last minute, and we still had funding for things, so we repitched it for Stargazer and made the thing in 13 days, which was not fun, but we had a great team together. Me and my DP that I've worked with on like the last like 4 short films, Kevin O'Donnell. We what you were mentioning with like kind of like tension and clashes with your collaborators. He's great to have because he challenges me, I challenge him, and we both like find like a really great area to work in together and bring forth the vision that I'm bringing to life. Because again, yeah, collaboration for me is so paramount, and he's just one of those great collaborators I always go back to. But yeah, no, we reworked the film in 13 days, got off the ground, and then just started to kind of get it pitching around and whatnot. And we'll see how it goes from here to genre festivals. But I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to return to SIFF with another genre short film here.
What is the short film community like here in Seattle?
It's great. I think it's like, there's a lot of like people that are energetic about like making stuff, and I do a lot of producing too with short filmmakers around here. If I like the script, they're able to get the money, whether we fundraise it through like Seed and Spark or a grant or what have you, or they're pulling out of their own pocket. I am always trying to like be realistic with them, break down like budgets with them, be like, listen, this thing's going to cost X. Are you willing to compromise or like look at things a bit more critically to make the best possible thing? And a lot of the filmmakers I've worked with have been very open-minded to that, while still trying to like be resourceful with what they have around them and what I'm able to pull for them as well. But yeah, again, like the community, there's a lot of genre filmmakers around here that are like spectacular filmmakers, and I'm really happy just to be in a really great bubble with all of them. And I think we're all trying to move into the feature film realm, and I think in the next like couple years there'll be a lot more of folks trying to make that leap more and more. But every time I see films from particular like-minded filmmakers that I've come up with, it's been exciting to see kind of their growth along with my growth as well. So
that's awesome.
Where did Stargazer premiere?
What was that?
Where did Stargazer premiere?
It premieres at SIFF Cinema Uptown on Friday, May 23rd at 9:30 p.m.
Is that your world premiere though?
Yeah, it's our world premiere though. Yeah. So we premiere there and go from there.
Nice.
It's exciting. And Peggy, you're here at SIFF with Jessica Earnshaw's Baby Doe. Can you tell us a little bit about that film?
It's interesting because you were asking me about Sweetheart Deal, and I think they both felt like really important stories to me, really personal stories, and they just both really resonated with me. And I think it's also the way they're both told, like in verite filmmaking, but piecing together like very real scraps in the end to tell a raw story that just feels, really true and real to people. And I think that's one thing, just to say for a second about the experience of showing Sweetheart Deal. And actually, we just had this experience at South by and in Cleveland showing Baby Doe that I'm actually so heartened because there's so much, well, I shouldn't say there's so much crap and glamour and everything in a lot of the movie industry, right? And so you think, oh, that's what people like. But people come out of both of these movies, which are just very heartfelt, very raw, very real. Like this started just being like scraps, piecing together real things to tell this total raw story, and people are very moved by that. So for some reason that's just really heartening to me. That people don't need all the glitz and glamour to. They think maybe they do, but this is really what people really.
But in reality, they're really just looking for stories.
Yeah,
and both films have women at the center who have made unimaginable choices and are living with that.
Yeah. So Baby Doe is, and I remember reading about this story like in 1993 in the New York Times, actually. But basically, a young Christian conservative, unmarried woman in rural Ohio, Gail, is in denial that she's even pregnant, and she gives birth alone to a baby. She believes the baby is stillborn, and she leaves it in the woods. And basically, fast forward 25 years. She's married now. She never told anyone about this experience. She's married. She has 3 adult kids and a little granddaughter. And the sheriff basically knocks on her door one day and arrests her for murder. And so it's just a really devastating portrait of a woman who comes face to face with her past and who she is, who she was, and then she becomes completely ensnared in the American justice system. So the filmmakers, Jessica, basically, she's just amazing filmmaker all by herself, and she shot the whole thing. She also had someone else who helped her shoot sometimes, but a lot, Emily Thomas, but she shot the whole thing too, in addition to being there. I mean, she's the director, and Emily Thomas, again, I want to mention because she also helped in a lot of the key scenes. But so Jessica basically embedded herself with this family throughout the process and filmed the trial, and I won't say what happened, but it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you want to think she's a villain, but she's not. She's a woman that had made a choice at a certain time. I mean, it's like, that came out badly. I don't want to think she's a villain.
Let's rewind that. No, just
yeah. But no, I mean, I don't want to think she's a villain, but at the same time, you're like, you, what happened there?
Yeah, well, no, I think it's really a film that we've seen in these few screenings that we've had so far, and I can't wait to show it at SIFF now, but that people totally feel a certain way at the beginning of the film, and they're pretty much entrenched, and they feel like, well, I know what this is about, and not to go into the details, and then by the end, that's the comment that everyone has. It's like they completely changed their mind about how they felt at the beginning. And so that's really interesting to watch that process and for people to discuss that afterwards. And people stayed for a long time discussing it with each other.
Yeah, it's a really intense story. It's a beautiful film also.
Yeah, it is a very beautiful film, beautifully shot. And the family that participated and allowed Jess into their lives to record this whole thing is pretty amazing.
Sounds fascinating. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of interesting, Sarah Jane Moore is also somebody who you kind of like her, and a lot of times you forget that she literally took a shot that almost killed the president of the United States. And yet she's funny and she's charismatic, and those kind of characters for film are kind of perfect, in my opinion, just like complicated, right? You don't know, what you think of them. I mean, even with Sam now, their mother disappeared, and, there's still things that you can like and appreciate about her and about her story. And you can sympathize. And I'm sure with Baby Doe, there's a lot of like sympathy for her despite this horrible thing happening, right?
Well, I should say, not to go into it too much, but the film is actually about her very personal story, but it also shows other stories parallel that are happening all over the country now because of DNA. So that's how they found her. It's all about this, which I never knew about, unperceived pregnancies, that people can be pregnant and not know it the whole time they're pregnant. Did you know that, Jason?
I mean, I have heard stories, but I don't know that much about it.
Yeah. I never knew about it till I was working on this project. And it's amazing and it's fascinating the way they explain this in the film too, with some really amazing psychologists who are in the film, but it's done really well. So the whole film just feels like this really personal, riveting story. But you also get this bigger point of view about unperceived pregnancies and how that can happen. But picture Gail. I mean, she was in a very religious rural family, and her dad had always said, no daughter of mine will ever, be pregnant before wedlock or whatever. And so, you could imagine for her here, she becomes pregnant. She has this this father who's like very, shall we say, stern. And so she did get a pregnancy test, but then it's like right away, it's just, well, someone like has a lump and you don't want to admit it, or it's just out of sight, out of mind, and you can convince yourself it's not true. I mean, we all do that every day, right? We have different scenarios going. And so there's been all these studies done now that show that women who have unperceived pregnancies really do not know that they are pregnant the whole time. And then all of a sudden one day she gave birth at work in the toilet. And so.
Crazy.
I mean, it's real life. Like
Yeah.
these and Sarah J. Moore, I mean, you can get radicalized very quickly. Like these things are real and they are happening, and the stories around them are so well suited to film because there is that empathy. You can create that. Yes, she did intend to kill Gerald Ford. I'm glad that she didn't, because that would have been bad. But it's just, you feel for her. Like there's
how can a person get to that point?
How do you get to that point where you take out a gun and try to kill somebody? And then what do you do for the next 30 years when you're thinking about that? Like there's that is something that film does so well, is to bring out that empathy, to create those spaces, because conversation will happen after all of your films, to create those spaces to have those conversations, to really like plumb some of the emotions that come up for all of us.
Yeah. And just that after film experience is unlike playing a video game, or it's unlike anything else, to have that live experience with the people afterwards and I think that's the thing we probably like, well, for certainly working on documentaries. I love working on documentaries because it's like going to school your whole life. It's always like, oh, wow, this whole new subject I get to learn about. And that's also what it's like going to see them at SIFF. I mean, you just learn about all this stuff.
I was alive when Sarah Jane Moore tried to kill Gerald Ford, but I don't really remember it. Like, and it doesn't live in my consciousness. But when I was watching the film, I was like, oh yeah, I remember all that. Oh yeah, Patty Hearst. Oh yeah, like that. There's things just grab in your brain and then live there and then can be brought back out and relearned.
Yeah, I love that, what Peggy's saying about documentaries. You really do a deep dive into sometimes subjects that you don't know that much about. I mean, like, one of the first films that I wasn't directing that I was producer editor on was a film called K2 Siren of the Himalayas. And I had just gotten into like climbing and things like that, but I by no means knew how to anything that much about climbing 8,000 meter peaks, other than like a few reading into thin air and stuff. But like, yeah, really getting in there and learning about the Karakoram mountain range and learning about what's involved to fly into Pakistan and go all that way, and just all the planning. It's like, wow, and Evergreen, which screened at SIFF, just learning the nuts and bolts of local politics and how, this law was passed to legalize marijuana for the first time concurrently with Colorado. I mean, and just Sam now dealing with like intergenerational trauma and Sarah Jane Moore, I love history, and so dealing with like this it's really amazing to be able to like dive deep and learn so much.
And it gives you license to call and talk to people about this subject that you're finding about,
Yeah. And with my first kind of big hit film was Sonicsgate, all about how the Sonics were stolen from Seattle and moved to Oklahoma City. And I'm still doing interviews this year about that film. This was like, we released it in 2009, 16 years ago. And I still, because I became an expert in some ways on the subject of team relocation, professional team relocation. And there aren't that many stories. And because I was the director of that film, people like come to me, and I know that topic up and down. I could talk in my sleep about it. I mean, really, what's the value of a professional sports franchise to a city economically or culturally? And like, how does this work in Europe? A team would never get reload. You aren't going to move Manchester United. It's literally impossible. But here in the United States, that sort of thing is allowed. And just being able to like learn that subject that I didn't know, the politics of it, the big business side of it, all that stuff, without making that film, I might have cursory information from reading articles and stuff, but not on the level when you're, interviewing people and then you're going through all that footage and you're trying to figure out how to tell it in a way that makes sense for your average person who may not even care about the topic,
So are the Sonics coming back?
Well, loaded question.
I had to ask. I had to ask.
Step the biggest step has been taken, which is that we have a state-of-the-art billion-dollar arena that's suitable for NBA basketball. One of the reasons we lost the team is because Key Arena was not that anymore in the eyes of the league. And so now that we've had this investment, it's a matter of team availability. So, and the NBA has teased for a lot of years the idea of an expansion franchise, but you know, and everyone's like, it's coming, it's happening. I get texts like, hey man, did you hear the news? I'm like, no, I haven't heard the news. It's only happening like once it's actually happening.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, I've learned not to get my hopes up, but yeah, I mean, it's never been closer, and there's serious talk about expansion. And I think it's just a matter of hopefully a few more years. Yeah.
Well, just on the topic of just documentary filmmaking, just like what I love about this watching is this the multi-dimensional kind of like material you're getting from just your subject matters, getting kind of the whole spectrum of like who this real person is and delving into their lives and context around them. I always find that fascinating. And then just like the amount of like well research that you guys go put into your work there. I find those to be like some like documentaries like that I always find so gripping and pulling to watch, and probably like why like I like Robert Eggers as a filmmaker, because he's very well researched into like the time period and setting and dialogue and mannerisms with all his horror films. And you know, it's something that I try to like even bring with Stargazer. It's like I have like an affinity for like, you know, astronomy and like you know, the deep kind of unknown of space and whatnot. But that's, you know, building like the feature version of my proof of concept, you know, trying to learn more about kind of like I had talked to I think the Seattle Astronomy Society here in Seattle at length about like kind of like, you know, how would an astronomer go about and investigate like studying certain stars and astrological things, and like even time of the year. Like time of the year was always kind of interesting in terms like hot, how hot and cold you'd be able to kind of like be able to like look to the stars without it like kind of messing up the scope itself. And then of course like just digging into like research for black holes. It's like I do like once I, you know, get the script together, I like to get more into the research, and then anything that's like from real world I can pull and twist a bit makes it I think that much more engaging and exciting for a filmmaker.
Yeah. So before we get to a little this or that, I know, you know, all of your films are still brand new, but have you already started your next projects?
You know, I always have my hands in a lot of different things, you know. I won't get into any like specifics, but one of my goals is to get back to doing some directing. So I'm working on some short projects that are still, you know, in development, or well, I'm actually shooting like one of them, but yeah, I think that like that's been a goal for me. You know, I've served a lot of other projects as producer and oftentimes like editor, so I'm really excited to get back to my own vision. I'm also trying on for size being EP on some projects that are a little like less direct involvement, because there's so much work when you're on as like the full producer. And so helping facilitate fundraising, helping with like key advice at different times, you know, I think that that's a role that I'd like to do more. Always like consulting, also consulting editor, consulting producer, you know. I think that I have a lot
taking
of,
my phone calls. Yeah.
taking no, I have a lot of knowledge that I can share from my experience in the industry. And so, you know, rather than spending these years of my life, like, you know, grinding it out on a project, it's pretty nice to like have someone else doing that and be able to come in on a more executive level and offer feedback on cuts, you know, feedback on business decisions and things like that.
Yeah.
But really like getting back to sort of like directing my own stuff. Hopefully, you know, that's how I started my career, and I'm looking forward to that.
That's awesome.
Would you do a Sonic Gate follow-up?
Well, you know, it's really funny because there's like lots of people poking around about doing a Sonic Gate follow-up. Honestly, I've spent like a lot of years in the Sonic Skate world.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily inclined. I kind of like to keep it fresh and do new things. I think my vision for a Sonic Skate is probably different than other people's, you know, like
Sure.
I would prefer to look at like basically pick up right where it left off and take it to present. A lot of people are more interested in a Sonics related project that documents the actual process of a team coming back.
Ah.
Which, that would also be really interesting. But like, I feel like the last 15 years has been incredibly interesting with the story. We had the whole street vacation issue in Soto and Chris Hansen and stealing the Sacramento Kings and then it falling through. And, there's a lot of interesting pieces of that. But yeah, it's definitely not a priority. I feel like I still can be a spokesperson for the Sonics cause and stuff. But, artistically, I'd like to keep creating new things and different things.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, right now it's just kind of like full steam ahead with Stargazer. Like I'm developing a feature for that. I'll hopefully get that off the ground in the next like year or two or so. But I, like with anything, just having a bunch of stovetops on and having a bunch of things cooking right now. So I have that, and then like another feature I'm developing at the moment. But yeah.
I do have a secret project. I can't talk about it yet, but I should be able to talk about it soon.
Oh, good. That's exciting.
Yeah, that's how I am too.
All three of you are like, something.
We got something
I just
cooking.
can't really. It's all good. But no, it's exciting because it's just, continuous working and pushing forward and making those films and telling those stories is so amazing.
And thank you, Beth, for showing our films.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You've been a huge supporter.
Yeah.
Our pleasure. Absolutely. Okay, so here's a little lightning round of this or that. All right, we're going to start with buttered popcorn or chocolate popcorn.
Well, geez, if we're talking about the Cinerama, I'm probably gonna have to go chocolate popcorn. It is a little rich, so I'm gonna hedge a little because I do like buttered popcorn, most of the time.
There is nothing wrong with the mix,
but
the mix rules.
The chocolate. I mean, if you're gonna point a gun at me, chocolate.
I mean, yeah, same. It's like I'd go with the mix, but like if you had to put a gun in my head, I'd go with butter just because traditional.
Chocolate. Hands down, chocolate. Aisle or center seat?
I'm all about the aisle. I like to have that easy exit. I like to, obviously, like if it's empty theater, I'm gonna sit like right in the center, relatively close, but back far enough. But if it's a packed theater, I kind of like to.
I like centered midway through. If I'm able to get it, but if I'm seeing a movie with my wife, we will do the aisle.
Aisle towards the back.
Yep. Everybody has their favorite seats. I'm like 4 rows back on the left. Paper or digital tickets?
Oh man. I mean, like, I guess if you're talking about like, people at your film, it's nice to be able to hand them like physical tickets. But yeah, a majority am digital at this point.
Paper if I can jump on it. My first movie ticket I collected was Fun with Dick and Jane with Jim Carrey in 2005. So I have this big bag of like movie tickets. It's not as full as it's not as like I'm not throwing tickets in there as I used to, but I do like the whole having the physical thing. So
Digital.
Peggy, you've got these down.
Keep prepared. No, with concert
I
tickets,
thought we were just supposed to give quick answers.
No, with like concert tickets, though, I love having like.
No, yeah.
I probably in various boxes have like my Nirvana ticket stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty cool if
Yeah.
I ever get around to like going through all that stuff.
Scrapbooking.
Yeah.
Probably not a lot of time to scrapbook.
And then matinee or midnight screening, and we're gonna start with you, Peggy.
Oh gosh, no, that's a hard one. Midnight.
Midnight.
Gosh. Midnight, I think. I just the audience is going to be great with a midnight screening, and not bad with the matinee. Matinee is like great for just going to see a movie just earlier in the day, but like I do think there's an energy with midnight.
Probably midnight, but although like I'm a little bit of a creature of comfort, so like
True.
get midnight's getting a little.
Can midnight start at 9 p.m.?
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming in and spending some time with us. All of your films, again, will be at Seattle International Film Festival. The website SIFF.net is a place that you can find that. Suburban Fury, Stargazer as part of the Spirit Cabinet, and Baby Doe.
May 20th. Yeah.
May 20th. Great.
May 21st.
May 23rd.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Beth.
Really appreciate it.